What if the business advice you got from an AI model was completely wrong, not because the model made an obvious mistake, but because a different AI model gave the exact opposite recommendation using the same information? That is not a hypothetical. I ran the same business plan through 5 AI models, and that is exactly what happened. Before we get into the results, I want to be clear about why this test matters. Millions of people are now using AI models as a first stop for business decisions. Pricing a product, choosing a target market, forecasting revenue. These are real decisions with real consequences, and a lot of people are making them based on AI output without questioning whether that output is actually reliable. Here is the business plan I used. It is a subscription-based meal kit service targeting urban professionals between 25 and 40. The plan included startup costs, a proposed price point, a basic competitive analysis, and a 12-month revenue projection. Nothing exotic. The kind of plan a first-time founder might actually put together and then bring to an AI model for feedback. The 5 models I tested were ChatGPT 4o, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Google Gemini Advanced, Microsoft Copilot, and Meta AI. I used each model on the same day, with the same prompt, pasted in the same business plan text. No fine-tuning, no special system instructions. Just the plan and the question: what are the strengths, weaknesses, and biggest risks in this business plan? The first model gave a confident, structured answer. It identified 3 strengths, 4 weaknesses, and called out customer acquisition cost as the single biggest financial risk. It recommended lowering the price point by about 15% to compete with established players and suggested narrowing the target demographic to people with household incomes above a specific threshold. The second model took a different approach entirely. It praised the pricing strategy and said the proposed price point was actually a competitive advantage because it positioned the brand as premium rather than discount. It recommended expanding the target demographic, not narrowing it. Same plan, same data, almost the opposite strategic direction. By the third model, a pattern was forming. This model spent most of its response on supply chain risk, something neither of the first 2 had even mentioned as a primary concern. It rated the financial projections as overly optimistic and suggested cutting the 12-month revenue forecast by nearly half. It also flagged regulatory issues around food handling that the other models had skipped entirely. Model 4 was the most positive of the group. It called the plan well-structured and said the revenue projections were realistic given current market conditions. It suggested a partnership strategy with fitness apps as the main growth lever, which was a genuinely interesting idea that none of the other models raised. But it did not identify any major financial risks. At all. The 5th model landed somewhere in the middle, but it did something the others did not. It flagged its own uncertainty. It said things like, based on general market patterns, or, this assessment would change significantly depending on the specific city or region. That kind of hedging felt more honest than the confident pronouncements from the other 4. So let us talk about the contradictions directly. On pricing alone, one model said lower the price, one said the price is a strength, and 2 others did not address it as a key variable at all. On the target market, one said narrow it, one said expand it. On the financial projections, one said they were realistic, one said they were too high by 50%. These are not small differences in emphasis. These are opposite conclusions. Why does this happen? There are a few reasons, and none of them are simple. First, these models are trained on different datasets with different weightings. Business advice written in 2019 looks very different from advice written after inflation, supply chain disruption, and market corrections reshaped the landscape. Models with more recent training data will reflect those shifts differently. Second, large language models are not reasoning engines in the way a human consultant reasons. They are pattern-matching systems. When you give one of these models a business plan, it is not analyzing your specific situation from first principles. It is generating text that follows the statistical patterns of business analysis it has seen before. 2 models trained on different text distributions will pattern match to different conclusions. Third, The way a model is fine-tuned and aligned changes its output style. A model tuned to be helpful and encouraging will soften its risk assessments. A model tuned for accuracy and caution will flag more problems. Neither setting is wrong exactly, but they produce very different advice from the same input, and most users have no idea which mode they are getting. Here is what I think the most useful takeaway is from this experiment. The model that flagged its own uncertainty was the one I trusted most, even though it gave the least definitive advice. Confidence in an AI response is not a signal of accuracy. It is a signal of how the model was trained to communicate. Learning to separate those two things is genuinely important if you are going to use these tools for real decisions. So which model did best overall? If I had to pick one that gave the most balanced and actionable feedback, it was Claude. It covered the most dimensions of the plan, acknowledged uncertainty in the right places, and raised the regulatory issue that most others missed. That does not mean it was right about everything. It means its response was structured in a way that was most useful as a starting point for further research. But here is a more important point than picking a winner. No single model should be your only source of business guidance. If you are going to use AI for a real decision, run it through at least two models and look for the places where they agree. Where they agree, you have some signal. Where they disagree, you have a question you need to answer with actual research, not more AI prompting. There are also better ways to prompt these models that reduce the contradiction problem. Instead of asking for a general assessment, ask for specific outputs. Ask the model to list every assumption it is making. Ask it to tell you what information it does not have that would change its answer. Ask it to give you the strongest counterargument to its own recommendation. These prompts surface the uncertainty that confident-sounding responses tend to hide. One more thing worth noting. Every single model in this test missed at least one significant issue that a human advisor with industry experience would have caught immediately. That is not a knock on these tools. It is a reminder that they are tools, not experts. The meal kit industry has very specific economics around churn, cold chain logistics, and customer lifetime value that general-purpose language models do not have deep expertise in. The practical conclusion here is this. AI models are genuinely useful for business planning at the brainstorming and structuring stage. They can help you organize your thinking, spot categories of risk you might have missed, and generate questions worth investigating. But they are not a substitute for domain expertise, real market data, or a conversation with someone who has actually operated in your industry. I am going to link in the description to the exact prompt I used for this test so you can run your own version with whatever plan or idea you are working on. Try it across multiple models and see where the advice lands. The contradictions you find are not a bug. They are actually useful information about where genuine uncertainty exists in your plan. If this video helped you think differently about how you use AI tools for real decisions, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are trying to use these tools without the hype. Subscribe if you want more tests like this one. Next up, I am running 5 AI models through a real marketing strategy to see whether they agree on what actually drives customer growth. That one gets even more interesting.